Masechet Eruvin Daf Peh. And today's daf, we're going to be speaking about transferring possession of an eruv. We'll be comparing all the different kinds of eruvim. And the question is, if I'm not making an eruv for myself, but rather I'm making it on behalf of someone else, and we're talking about all the different kinds, do I have to do an act of a possession, of transferring, of ownership, in order to do it for someone else? We'll explain it all and it'll become clear, and then we'll discuss whether you can get permission from someone's wife. Can someone's wife perform an eruv? Can you force the owner to contribute to the eruv? And we'll actually get back to Asherah. But let's start off. We saw Mishnah. Last time we ended with a few things that the elders of Pumbedita taught. One of them was about Asherah also, and that's why it's interesting. We're going to get back to Asherah later. And it said that if someone said, how do you know an Asherah tree when you see one? If someone says these dates are going to be for beer for the temple of Be Nitzrefe, the certain temple. This word is interesting, Be Nitzrefe. It's probable that it comes from originally Be Sirafe, the house of burning. Because we know the Persians, the Zoroastrians, they worshipped fire, and so they would do, burning certain things there. But it purposely, according to this note, mispronounces the name because it's a place of Avodah Zarah. We don't want to give it honor by calling it its real name, and so we give it a mispronounced nickname in order to dishonor it. So I think that's very interesting if that note is in fact accurate. All right, so that was one of the things that the elders of Pumbedita said. But the way we got onto this in the first place was because of the first thing that we said. And the Mishnah says, if you want to join together, if you want to join an alleyway and do shituf chaserot, so you can take a barrel of food and you say, this is going to be for everyone. All right, so now according to the Mishnah, that's it. You just say it's for everyone. It doesn't sound like you have to do anything more than that. Just make that declaration. But Rav Yehuda in the Gemara says, "Sarich lehagbia min hakarka tefach." You have to also pick it up one tefach. Now, what does that accomplish? Picking it up one tefach. Usually, when you pick something up, that means I'm acquiring it. Now, so if it's your food, right, and I pick it up, I'm acquiring it on behalf of everybody else in the mavoy, right? Or if it's my food and I give it to you and you pick it up and acquire it on behalf of everyone. So that's the chidush that Rav Yehuda is adding here, and the elders of Pumbedita say the same thing, that you have to pick it up and acquire it. All right, so that's how we got onto this thing. Rav Yehuda says you have to pick it up one tefach, right? A good 3 inches to really show something noticeable that you're actually picking it up. And that's where we're going to start off here. We have a question about this. Kesad mishtatefin b'mavoy. We have a braita that says, how does one merge alleyways together? Mevi'im chavit shel yayin, v'shel shemen, v'shel temarim, v'shel gerogarot, v'shel sha'ar mine perot. The vavs here don't mean and. You don't have to bring all of these things. It means any one of these things. Bring any produce that you want, that you're going to use to make the shituf mevo'ot. Im mishelo sarich lezakot. Im mishelahen sarich lehodia. If it belongs to me, let's say we're all in a courtyard, in an alleyway together, and you each represent courtyards. And so let's say it's my food, and I'm going to pick up, I have mine. So then I have to do something to pick it up, to acquire it for you, for your sake. If I'm using, right, in that case, I don't need your permission. I can take my own food and I acquire it. I pick it up on behalf of you. And because it benefits you, we say zakin la'adam shelo befanav, right? If I pick up a watch and I say, oh, you know what? Moselle would love this watch. I pick it up for Moselle. Then it's yours, even though you don't even know about it, right? It belongs to you. So to here, doing a shituf, joining the mavoy, is good for you, and therefore I don't even have to tell you about it, and it works. Im mishalahen, however, if it's your food that I'm picking up, Sarich lehodia. I'm using your food. What I'm doing is I'm taking, food that's belongs to one of you or two of you and picking it up on behalf of everyone. And that means everyone can go and share it. Now you have to agree to that. So I have to announce and say, listen, I'm doing it, and you have to be okay with it for it to work. Okay, now, so that's the two ways. We're going to be discussing this a lot. So make sure you have this clear, right? If it's my food, then I don't need your permission. If it's your food, I have to let you know. How much do I have to pick it up in order for it to work? Mashihu, even the smallest little bit, even a hair's breadth. So this is the contradiction, because above we said you have to pick it up one tefach for Rav Yehuda, and now we say even in this baraita, even any little bit is enough. Okay, so we're going to answer this question easily. My mashu nami dekamar tefach. When it says here mashu, it doesn't mean really a hairbreadth. You have to pick it up some significant amount. The smallest significant amount is one tefach. Okay, good. So we resolved that, but now we get into the larger question of zikui. Do I have to actually make a transaction, a monetary transaction that gives you or gives me possession of the eruv? Or is it enough to just say, it belongs to me, and I declare I am, this eruv will be for all of you, even though I'm not actually doing anything so that you acquire it? That's the question. All right, so we say as follows: Itmar, shitufem mevaot, joining together courtyards. Machloket. Rav amad en tzarich lezakot. Ushmel amad tzarich lezakot. Rav is more lenient here and says you don't have to pick it up and actually do anything. I could just designate it, like the Mishnah says. That doesn't say anything about it. No, forget. Take that back. What the Mishnah says. We'll get back. We'll get to that. Shmuel says you have to. Eruvin techumin. Rav amar sarich lezakot. Ushmuel amar en sarich lezakot. If regarding eruv techumin, let's say we're all in the city together and we're all planning on going to visit a rabbi that's coming on the east. And so let's say I take some food and I go put it outside the city to the east 2,000 amot, and I do it on behalf of all of you because I know that you all want to go there, right? So in that case, do I have to lift up this bread, let's say it's mine, and say, I am acquiring this on behalf of you, then you all have ownership in it? So Rav says, yes, I do. Shmuel says, in this case, I don't. So they flip opinions depending on if it's shituf mevaot or eruv techumin. So let's try to explain, what's the logic behind this? So it would seem that I think we can explain Shmuel as follows. And shituf mevaot means we're all sharing the alleyway together, right? Everybody has access to the alleyway. And so since we're sharing something, we need to all have possession, right, of a piece of the alleyway. And so too, the eruv is joining together represents our joint possession. So it makes sense. Shmuel says we all need to own a piece of it. 1 second. Whereas techumin is not really about sharing, where I'm just putting it there to say that place outside the city signifies where I'm going to be. We're not sharing anything. And so for that reason, Shmuel in that case does not think that we have to own it or possess it. And so I don't have to lift it up on behalf of you. Question? I can't hear you. No, I still can't hear you. Okay. Whereas for Rav, Rav would have to have a different logic. So for Rav, in a shituf mevaot, where I know for sure it benefits all of you, so then I almost don't need to do anything for you to possess it. Usually when I pick something up, I have to do some act to show, yes, I want it, and because there's consequences to owning something, I have to pay for it and so on. But here, I don't have to do anything because for sure you all want it. Whereas eruv techumin is more complicated. If I make a eruv techumin on your behalf, well, I'm benefiting you because now you can walk 2,000 amot more east, but that means you can walk less in the west. right? So therefore, eruv tichumin, I can't assume that it's going to always be good for you. So you have to take possession of it. You have to be a part of it more than eruv shituf mevaot. Okay, that may be some of the logic behind it. In any case, we're going to test it out with some sources. Bishlama lishmael hacha tenan, v'hacha lo tenan. Okay, according to Shemuel, we understand it makes sense. Here, regarding Shituf Mevo'ot, our Mishnah presumes that you do have to pick it up. You do have to do harezeh lechol b'nei mavoy mizakeh lahen mizakeh al yidei beno. Right? We saw I have to give it to someone and say you will acquire it on behalf of everyone else. So the Mishnah clearly states that you do have to do an act of transferring ownership. And regarding eruv tichumin, no Mishnah anywhere says you have to do an act of transferring ownership, even if I do it on your behalf. So Shemuel makes perfect sense. He fits the Mishnayot. Ela lerav my ta'ama. But Rav seems to go against the Mishnah. He says the opposite. So Rav can answer as follows. First of all, we sometimes say Rav is like a Tana. He has that level of being like a Tana. So that's why regarding Eruv Shituf Mevaot, he can argue with our Mishnah. And with Tichumin, he has the following source to back him up. And he says it's a machloket Tanaim. And we'll see this from the following story. Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Rav, Maaseh bechallato shel Rabbi Oshaya, shalcha lebet hamelchas vechashchala, berbala hamota. One time, the daughter-in-law of Rabbi Oshaya, she went to the bathhouse. It was outside the city, more than 2,000 amot. She went there on Friday afternoon. And then it got dark. Now, her mother-in-law, she had a nice mother-in-law. She was very lucky. And the mother-in-law says, oh no, my daughter-in-law went outside the Tchum on Shabbat. She won't be able to get back in. I know before a Shabbat starts, the mother-in-law takes some food and puts it outside the city on behalf of her daughter-in-law. So that the daughter-in-law will be able to come back and walk home from the bathhouse. Okay, that's very nice. Now, Bama Selifne Rabbi Chaya. Rabbi Chaya is a Tana. And so this case came before the Bichiyah. Says, is this permitted? Can the mother-in-law do this for the daughter-in-law? Ve'asad. He says, no, it's not allowed. Okay, I'm not sure how this exactly worked. Where was the Bichiyah that she went to ask, and then she would have to go and tell the daughter-in-law, you can come, you can come. Okay, but somehow it worked out. The Bichiyah says you can't do this. Now, why? Amar lo Rabbi Ishmael Rabbi Yoseh bavlai. So Rabbi Ishmael heard that Rabbi Chia was so stringent, and he says, "You Babylonian." Rabbi Chia originally came from Bavel, but now is in Eretz Yisrael. He says, "Kol kach ata machmir be'eruvin, kach amar Abba, kol sheyesh lecha lehakel be'eruvin hakel." He says, "Why are you so stringent?" My father, this is Rabbi Ishmael, the son of Rabbi Yosef. So his father is Rabbi Yosef, said that whenever you can be lenient in the laws of Eruv, you should always be lenient, right? It's all midrabanan. It's all trying to help people and make Shabbat easier for people. Why are you being so machmir, you Babylonian? Okay, so that's the story. And then analyzing the story, we wondered, why did Rabbi Chaya prohibit it in the first place? Well, this could be two possible reasons. One is that the mother-in-law used her own food in order to make the eruv, but she didn't do a zikui. She didn't pick it up or give it to someone so that it will be the ownership of the daughter-in-law, and that's why it doesn't work. If that's true, that agrees with Rav. Right, above says that you do need to transfer ownership in the case of Eruv Tichumin. Or it could be Mishalai Irva. Maybe the mother-in-law used the daughter-in-law's food. But the problem is, if I use someone else's food, I have to tell you, right? In this case, she didn't announce and tell the daughter-in-law, I'm using your food for this. And that's why it's no good. Okay, so we weren't sure what the reason was. And so when they asked that, Amar lehen ahu merabanan v'Rabbi Yaakov shemeh. So when they were discussing this, one sage, Rabbi Yaakov, said, "Ledidi mefarsha lamineh de Rabbi Yochanan." Rabbi Yochanan, earlier than him, knew this story, and he explained it to me as follows: Mishel chamotai rava, mishum delo ziketala. It was in fact the mother-in-law's, and the mother-in-law did not do an act of transferring of ownership, so to transfer the ownership to the daughter-in-law, and that was the problem. So you see that this is Rabbi Chia, who was a Tana, and he said, in this case, it's prohibited because you didn't transfer ownership. This is a support for Rav, who had that opinion. So Rav says, it's true. I don't have a Mishnah to back me up, but I have this Tana, Rabbi Chia, to back me up. So it's a machloket Tanaim, right? And because you see, Rabbi Ishmael disagreed. So Rav says, I have support from the Tanaim. Just a continuation of that story, that we have the same thing, supporting this interpretation. Amar Rabbi Zera Rabbi Yaakov berah de bat Yaakov. So Rabbi Zera once told Rabbi Yaakov he was the son of the daughter of Yaakov. This Rabbi Yaakov's grandfather was named Yaakov. So you see, they named after their grandfathers like we do. Interestingly here, he was named after his mother's father. Maybe that's just because he was the second boy, but there's other suggestions. Rashi here says that his father was a lowlife, and so he was not named after his father. The Geonim say the opposite, that it's not because his father was bad, but rather because his mother was so great. She was well known for her some great things that she did. She was a famous woman, and therefore he was named after his mother's side rather than his father's side. Okay, lots of different possibilities. Anyway, this Rabbi Yaakov was going to travel. It says Kimatet Hatam. This is when you go. He was going to Eretz Yisrael. When you go to Eretz Yisrael, Akif Vizir Lesulama Desor. Take a long cut and go to Sor, to Tyre, Ubayab, the path over there, Ubayamine Merav Yaakov Bar Idi, and ask the following, ask about the story from Rabbi Yaakov Bar Idi. Ask him, why did Rabbi Chia prohibit in this case? What exactly happened? Here's, we have a map. I guess is you could have gone this way. Instead, he goes this way so he can pass through Tyre. Here's the ladder of Tyre. So eventually he'll get to probably Tiberias, where he's going. So it's a bit of a long way, but this is important enough. You should go a few days out of your way in order to ask him this question. So he does. And he gets there, and in this case, why was it a problem for Rabbi Chia? Was it the mother-in-law's food, and the problem is mother-in-law did not transfer possession, or it was the daughter-in-law's food, and she used it without her permission? And he said, he confirmed the same conclusion that Rabbi Yochanan said. It was in fact the mother-in-law's food. Okay, so that's the end of that story, and it shows that, that according to the Bichia, and Rav follows this, one does need to transfer possession in the case of Eruv Techumin. Good. Now we'll summarize and bring in some more cases. Amar Rav Nachman. Rav Nachman, standard Rav Nachman is Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak. And Amora. Naktinan. Ehad Erube Techumin. We saw. That was Rav's opinion. We didn't talk about that yet. That's Shmuel's opinion. You do have to transfer ownership. You have to pick it up in order to say, I'm picking this up, and now it's owned by all these people. You need to do that in all these cases. We have a question in terms of conferring intention. What if one person doesn't want to be included and expresses this? Is it avoided? Sometimes people can be oppositional. That is a great question, right? We say zakin la'adam shelo befanav, right? But what if I pick up the watch and I say, Moselle would love this watch, and Moselle's there, says, I don't want it, I hate it, it's going to make my taxes go up. It's right, I have to put it on my insurance, and says, right, says I don't want it. That is a good question. In this case, this is actually practical because in modern Eruvin, we do it on behalf of everyone, even though there are groups of people that are sometimes actively picketing and cutting it down and saying we don't want it. Yet we still say if they really understood the halacha well and the intention of the halacha and how they're saving people from carrying and all the background and his history and what the sages say, then they would agree. They're just ignorant right now. So in this case, we do override their active objections. So I think that has good basis, but I'm sure there's a lot of discussion about your question. Okay, so Rav Nachman says in all three cases here, we have to do something to transfer possession. So we're following Rav and Shmuel lehachmir, both of them, and we're saying Eruv Chatzerot also, same as doing a Shituf Mevo'ot. Everyone has to have possession of it. Now we lift out one kind of Eruv. We're going to ask about now. Ba'ed Rav Nachman, Eruvei Tavshilin Sarich Lezakot or En Sarich Lezakot. We haven't spoken much about Eruv Tavshilin, but this is the one you probably know best because we do this all the time. Whenever you have Yom Tov followed by Shabbat, if you want to prepare on Yom Tov, cook for Shabbat, you do an Eruv Tavshilin, which is also a kind of partnership, a kind of mixing, where saying that the cooking that we're going to do over Yom Tov, we're starting from now, and we're going to join it together with the rest of the cooking that we do so that we can prepare for Shabbat. All right, in that case, we have to prepare a meal before Yom Tov and designate it. Now, let's say I want to do it on your behalf, right? You say, listen, I'm busy, I can't do it. Actually, nowadays we have a custom that the rabbi of every city will do the Eruv Tavshilin and have everybody in mind. Okay, is it enough that he just has everybody in mind as he says the beracha, or does he have to actually pick it up or even give it to someone and say, take possession on behalf of the city so that everybody actually owns it and they can all knock on the rabbi's door and come and eat a piece of it if they want? Is that necessary, like it is in all these cases, or not? So Rav Nachman knew the halacha in the first three, but he wasn't sure about this one. Amar Rav Yosef, Umayti ba'ale, lashemi aleh had Amar Rav Nachman bar Rav Ada, Amar Shmuel, Eruvei Tavshilin sarich lezakot. So Rav Yosef is wondering why his friend is asking. Why are you asking this? Don't you know what? This is a different Rav Nachman. Rav Nachman, the son of Rav Ada, in the name of Shmuel, reported that Eruv Tavshilin, you do need to give possession. So there you go. Why are you asking this question? So Amar le Abaye says, stand back. Don't give him such a hard time. Obviously, he didn't hear that tradition. If he heard that tradition, then he would have said, yes, you have to. He's asking because he didn't know. Don't give him such a hard time that he's just asking a question. So Amar le atu eruvei techumin mi la amar Shmuel en sarich lezakot. V'amar ihu sarich lezakot. So Rav Yosef said, wait, hold on. Shmuel also said something else that we don't follow, right? Shmuel said regarding Eruv Techumin that you don't have to, and yet Rav Nachman said Sarich lezakot. So you see that just because Shmuel said something doesn't mean that we necessarily follow it. We don't follow it in the case of Eruv Techumin. So therefore, the point is that Rav Nachman could have asked just as well, even if he heard that tradition from about Shmuel, maybe he asked whether we follow that tradition or not. So we say, hold on, is that really the same? Although in that case, we knew that there's a machloket Rav and Shmuel, and so you have to say that we follow the chumrah of each. That there would be a question. But in this case, if you heard what Rav Nachman bar Avada said in the name of Shmuel, that Eruv Tavshilin, you do need to take possession, there is no one that argues on this. So if he heard this tradition, surely he would not have asked the question. So it must be that he really didn't know the tradition. In any case, now that we have the tradition in Shmuel, So we add this on. So what we have now is all four cases, right? Shituf mevot, eruv techumin, eruv chatzerot, eruv tavshilin. All of them, you need to pick it up and transfer possession to others. All right. Now we're gonna have a story about what do you do if the owner is not around or doesn't or doesn't want to. This back to Johnny's question, whether you can do a loophole by trying to convince the man's wife to do it, or if you can force him against his will. Okay, so who to the zina. There was a guard, a non-Jewish guard in the neighborhood of Rabbi Zera, and they wanted to make an eruv. So obviously they need his participation. They need to rent from him the right to use the courtyard. Right, a non-Jew cannot join in the eruv. He can't give bread, but he can rent out his right. We pay him for it. So the Godim says, can we rent out the joint use of your courtyard? Right, he can use it also. Everybody can use it. No, he says, I won't give it to you. All right, not such a nice guy. So they went to the Bizera. It's his neighborhood. He's the chief rabbi there, and says, how about his wife? Right, we can get friendly. We'll have one of our wives will get friendly with his wife, and we'll do it that way. Says, yes, we have it upon good tradition from Resh Lakish, from Rabbi Chanina, that a person's wife can transfer possession even without her husband's knowledge. Okay, this is fantastic. So that way they can go and do it like that. All right, a similar story. Rav Yehuda's city, same problem. The guard, non-Jewish guard there, wouldn't rent it out. So they went to the rabbi and they said, can we get his wife's permission? Is that sufficient? He didn't know the answer. He also didn't know the answer. So this is not such a widely known halacha, but in fact, you can go and ask a person's wife. I suppose that means that you need a kind of a low level of agreement. I don't think a person's wife is permitted to just go and sell all her husband's property without his knowledge. Right, but here it's we saw in other cases that even someone who just works there, even a sharecropper, so because we're not really renting it out, it's not like we can move in and take his stuff, but rather we just want to rent out the right to be able to carry in the joint area, which is not such a big deal. Okay. Say a misdemeanor, not a crime, right? Okay, so I mean, just like the wife has rights to walk there, if she has rights to it, so she can give over those same rights. So it's a lower level, so it's permitted. Now we have a problem with this from a Baraita. Metibe nashim she'irbu v'nishtatefu shelo midat ba'alehen en eruvan eruv ve'en shitufan shituf. Okay, first of all, those we're talking about non-Jews. Here we're talking about Jews, but that's not going to be the main difference. Here it says that wives who join in an eruv without their husband's permission, the eruv is no good, and the shituf mivot is no good. And you just said that the wife can give permission. So what's going on? We need to resolve this. La kashya ha de asar ha de la asar. Okay, it makes a difference in the circumstances. If it's a circumstance where without this person's permission, we won't be able to carry at all, then we can use this leniency and rely on the wife to give it to us. However, if it's a case where we can carry in our own courtyard, no matter what, and we just need the permission to carry in an adjacent courtyard, or we do have one way out through this mavoy, but we want another way out, right? In other words, if we can live without it and comfortably, and this is just added value, then you need the husband to agree to it. So ideally, you want the husband to agree to it, but in pressing circumstances where there is no other way to carry at all, then you can rely on the wife doing it. And that would explain why in these cases they don't go straight to the wife. You first go to the husband and try to do it that way. In those days, it was the husband that had the full financial responsibility over his lands. And this also makes sense. Because otherwise we would have a contradiction of two things that Shemuel said. Because here's something else that Shemuel once said. So if we regularly join together a certain courtyard, a certain person in our mavoy, and one time he was away, we didn't get a chance, so we can go in and take from him against his will, without his knowledge, and make him do it, because he always does it. This is kind of like, in an office where everybody gives $1 for the lottery every week, right? And then one week, I was in the bathroom when you were collecting. I didn't give $1, and then you win that week, right? So then you should still split it with You should still split it with me. Okay, so in this case, we do it without against his will. Now, so it says ragil, only if you normally did it, he joined, and only 1 week he didn't. Ragil in, shen ragil la, shema mina. So that means only in some cases you can force him to, but not in other cases. So you see that we have to differentiate. And so we're making a parallel between against his will, is if it's permitted, and also asking his wife is permitted. And some cases against his will is not okay, and asking his wife would not be okay. So you see that there depends on the circumstances, and this shows that when there's no other way to do it, and we wouldn't be able to carry it all, then you can rely on his wife, but otherwise not. Good. Now, maybe this also adds support. That if we have an alleyway and one side is open, and you need to put a side post, right, or a beam, that we can force everyone, let's say you don't want to join, we can force you, take you to court, and make you contribute and put that thing up. And so this would seem to agree, because Shemuel says in some cases you are allowed to force someone, like over here. So is that a support? Well, it could be a support, but not necessarily. In that case, maybe the reason why you can force him is because you have an empty wall. And in general, we have an empty wall, we can force each other to put up a wall for security, for protection. And so since I could force you to do that, so too I can force you to put up a wall for halachic reasons. It's a less expense. Or another way of saying it, lishnachrina misad shani. Something from the side is different. This language is a little difficult. Some people say it should say mi betin shaneh, that the betin is making it happen. I think we can explain this. So the side is different. The preparation of it is not involved in adjustment to the alleyway itself, but rather a side issue. Consequently, the individual cannot be forced to participate in its preparation. Right. In other words, you're putting up a barrier. This is a side issue, not the eruv itself, and so maybe that's why I can force it, but not in that case. All right. But so that is not necessarily a proof. Okay. Good. Itmar. Rav Chiya bar Asher Amar Osin Lechi Asherah. I told you we're going to get back to Asherah. Can you make a side post out of an Asherah wood? When you have a mavoy, and you need, in order to carry in a mavoy, to do shituf mavot, the one side has to have some enclosure. It could be a side post or a beam. And he says you can make the side post out of Asherah wood, even though you can't benefit from it. In this case, we say mitzvot lav lehanot nitnu. Mitzvot do not benefit us physically, and so even though we're using it for mitzvah, it's okay. Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish Amar Osin Korah Asherah. He says you can make a crossbeam out of Asherah wood. The second opinion says I can make a cross beam. All the more so, I could make a side post. One who says side post would say only a side post is okay because a side post can be any width at all. It doesn't have a measurement. Whereas a cross beam needs to be thick enough, has to be at least a tefach to be able to hold up something on it. And so therefore, the problem with Asherah is because I can't get any benefit from it, it's as if it has no size, right? Its size is meaningless to me halachically. This is what David mentioned yesterday, that a lulav made out of Asherah is not kosher because it's not long enough. Even if it's very long, right? The problem is that it's considered as if it's crushed, as if it's nothing. And so therefore it's no good. Okay, that is the end of that Mishnah's discussion. And let's go on for a bit. Next Mishnah. Nitma'et ha'ochel, mosif u'mezakeh, ve'en sarich lehodia. I have a barrel full of food that represents everybody, and now it went down. Either from maybe I made it 1 week and had enough for everybody, and then a few weeks later, people are eating it, or it deteriorates, and now there's not enough food. I have to add some more. So it says I can add mosif. I add more, and I transfer the property to everyone else, and I don't have to tell them, even if it's your property, because you already agreed to it, and now I'm just continuing something that we already agreed to. So when the level gets too low, I can take from your property and lift it up on all of our behalf, and I don't have to get your permission anymore. If more people join in, come and move into the city, and now we need more food, then if I'm using their food, I add to it, but I have to tell them, because for them it's a new shituf mevaat. So that's the principle. If I'm just continuing something old, I don't have to tell you, even if it's your food. But if it's new, then I do have to tell you. How much food is the minimum? Kama hu shiuran. בזמן שהן מרובין מזון שתי סעודות לכולם, בזמן שהן מועטים כגרוגרת לכל אחד ואחד. If we are just a few people, then I need a fig size for each and every person. If it's a lot, then all I need is 2 meals that for one person, one person's amount of 2 meals for everybody. In other words, even if we have 1,000 people in our courtyards, all we need is 1 pita bread, right? Or 2 pita breads for all of us. So if it's much less, if it's only a few people, right, just 5 or 6 people, then just a fig's amount. That's it. Good. Amar Rabbi Yosef, באמת דברים אמורים בתחילת עירוב, אבל בשיעורי עירוב kol shehu. Rabbi Yosef seems to disagree with what we said above. It says, when do you need this minimal amount? Only at the beginning when you're starting off to make the eruv. But if after the 2nd, 3rd week, people start eating it, then all you need is the tiniest bit left, right? So to start it off, you need 2 meals. And then after that, even a tiny bit is enough to continue. And you can take that and you could last the whole year without a problem. You see that Tanakama must disagree, because Tanakama talks about a case where it got less, and it got less. That means you have to keep replenishing so that you have enough. Why is Rabbi Yosef so lenient and say you can continue going on even with just a little speck of food? He says because the whole thing about eruv chatzerot is not really necessary. All you need is shituf mevaot. If I'm gathering all the courtyards together in the same alleyway, then that's bigger, and we're all sharing even the bigger space. So I don't need to do the eruv chatzerot. So therefore, we only do eruv chatzerot to teach the kids, so they don't forget that we have such a halacha. And since it's only for them, even the little spit is fine. Okay, good. That is the Mishnah. That's the Mishnah. Now the Gemara says, "B'may iskinan ilema b'min echad ma'idya nitma'et afilu kala nameh." If it's talking about when we are replenishing, are we using the same thing? If we use dates, am I going to replenish with dates also, or am I replenishing with grapes? So if it was dates and I'm replenishing with the same thing, then why do I have to say if it got lower? Even if it was completely depleted, I'm just using dates again. So just like I used your dates the first time, so I can assume that it would be okay to use your dates again without informing you. So why'd you say if it got diminished? It should just say if it got depleted. So maybe it means that first I used your dates and now I'm using your grapes. And that's what I have to tell you. Well, then, in that case, even if it just got less, I should need to tell you. If I'm using a different thing, right, you didn't agree necessarily to contribute your grapes to it, so then I should need to tell you. So which one is the Mishnah talking about? I can answer it actually both ways. When we said it got lower, really, I mean, it became nothing at all. And that's why it makes sense that the Mishnah will say, if we use dates and now it got to nothing, I can still add more of your dates and without telling you. Or I can say, it's in fact talking about a different item. And if it finished off completely, then that is different. So the Braita that says I need to tell you, that's when it completely depleted. That's when I need to tell you. But as long as there's something left of the dates, then I don't have to tell you about the grapes that I'm using. Okay, so that's we were able to resolve that. Nitosfu alehen mosif umezakeh. Now, if more people come, it says I have to add more food and I have to tell them. Amadav shizbi amadav chista zot omeret chalukin alav chaverav al Rabbi Yehuda. So this proves that Rabbi Yehuda is disagreeing with his colleagues. What are we talking about? It's actually the next Mishnah over here, where we're going to see that Rabbi Yehuda has a machloket. It's down here. We have a number of opinions, and then over here, Rabbi Yehuda says, when is this true? Be'eruvei techumin, aval be'eruvei chatzerot marvin ledato v'shelo ledato. That's the principle I said before. This is the source of it. So Rabbi Yehuda makes a difference between eruv techumin, where I don't need to get your permission. Where I do need to get your permission because I'm making you go only one way. And eruv chatzerot, where I don't need to get your permission. That was Rabbi Yehuda's opinion. It's not clear in this Mishnah if he's adding on or disagreeing with the opinion before. And so now we're going to say he's actually disagreeing. And so how do we know that? We get back to where I am. Ditnan, Amar Rabbi Yehuda, medemrim be'eruvei techumin, aval be'eruvei chatzerot marvin ben ledat ben shelo ledat. Peshita de chalukin. So you see that he's arguing because our Mishnah says if more people come and I'm doing an eruv with them, eruv chatzerot or shituf mevaot, I need to get their permission. So you see that Rav Yehuda doesn't represent everyone's opinion. Now we say Peshuta. Of course he disagrees. In the next Mishnah, you can see that he disagrees. Oh, so I might have thought that is only true in a courtyard that's between two mevaot. And in that case, I have an option. I can go this way and I can go that way. And so I might think that I only need to get their permission when there is another way to go out, but not otherwise. And so therefore, this teaches us that Rabbi Yehuda his disagreement applies in all cases, whether there is another way for the people to go out or there's only one way for the people to go out. Okay, good, almost done. Kama hu shiuro, kama hu merubin. Now, how much is many, right? When it says if there's a lot of people, you only need the amount of two meals. 18 people. If you have 18 people, then all you need is 2 meals worth for all the 18 people. So Shimoneh Sevetula, okay, only 18? What if you have 19? What if you have 100? Right? You didn't tell me that case. I mean 18 and above. Okay. What's special about 18 that you say 18 is a lot? אמר רבי יצחק ברד רב יהודה לדידי מפרשה לי מיני דאבא כל שאילו מחלקו למזון שתי סעודות ביניהן בין מגד גרוגרת לכל אחד ואחד הן מרובין ושגיא במזון שתי סעודות ולא הן מועטין הוא. 18, the reason is because if we have less, right, if we have 15 people, 16 people, everybody needs a fig's worth. Once you have 18 figs worth of food, you already have 2 meals. So that's why 18 is the minimum, is the maximum number you'd ever need. For if you have 18 figs worth, then you already have 2 meals. So 18 and above, even up to thousands, all you need is 2 meals worth. And now we have, as a tangent, we learn a nice thing that a 2 meals worth of food is 18 dried figs worth of food. So that's a good calculation because these correlations are important and they come up often. And so now we're able to correlate these 2 halachot. All right, so we went through a lot of different cases. I got to compare all the different Eruvin, and tomorrow we'll continue with the next Mishnah. Baruch Adonai Leolam. Amen ve'amen.